Damn.
Nice, Pete.
What?
I saw you checking out that girl's butt.
What? I was just checking out her yoga pants.
Pete.
I was thinking you'd look really good in yoga pants.
Uh-huh.
I was like trying to check out what brand it was. Like I was looking at her form on deadlifts. They were all messed up.
Do you think she has a nicer butt than me?
Well, it definitely doesn't look like a pancake.
Did you just call my butt a pancake?
Well, I mean,
What can I do?
you gotta try New York Muscle Radio's Glutylicious program.
Glutylicious.
Yeah, you'll finally get a celebrity booty, like all the other girls following the program.
Fine, I'll do it. But don't get jealous when other guys check out my glutylicious ass.
Glutylicious, your guide to getting a celebrity booty in 12 weeks. Now available exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. New York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio, episode number 125. It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, along with my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and welcome to the New York Muscle Radio podcast, the best muscle building podcast on iTunes. Again, guys, if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, do so now. Whenever you do, you take ownership of this podcast. It becomes your podcast. You are now in charge of the content that you want from us. And when you subscribe, you get these things linked right to your phone directly. You could email us at newyorkmuscleradio@gmail.com. Tell us what you want to hear, and we'll put it out for you because now we work for you. Just in return, we just asked for a 5-star review. So just make sure you go ahead and do that. Today's topic, the 6 exercises you should never do. Big guy, can't wait to tell you that you shouldn't be working out pretty much.
That's what we're going to be doing on this podcast. It is a fitness-related podcast. We're going to tell you guys what you should not be doing. Because I think everybody does one of these exercises and they probably shouldn't. You know, I see them in every gym, wherever I go.
Yeah. It was kind of actually hard to put this list together. It wasn't like an easy thing.
Well, you got to think about it, too, because so many people do things wrong to begin with. So to pick exercises that you definitely shouldn't be doing, you have to single out a lot of exercises. So that should say something about them that they're pretty bad because, you know, you haven't been working out in the gym as religiously as you used to since you train at home now. So you might have forgotten what you see in a typical gym on any given night. You know, you can see
I'm sure.
some disasters. You know, I can't tell you how many times just this week I saw the most dangerous looking squats that I've probably ever seen in my life. You know, and it's
I love
only
the quarter squats.
It's only Wednesday today. You know, I almost saw a guy die under 315 today, doing quarter squats with the bench between his legs, which I still never understand why anybody does that.
People are just scared to actually deadlift. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean,
squat. You know, I saw that. I saw some other guy look like his knees were going to snap at 275 the other day.
Everything is snapped.
Oh, man. I don't know. People need help, and that's why they come to New York Muscle Radio for help, and we're going to give them the help.
Exactly. So ditch that bench between your legs and
Yeah.
start squatting to at least parallel or below. Actually, I never understood why people do half squats. I mean, I understand why, because squats are a hard exercise, but you know, doing half rep squats are actually terrible for the knee. They're actually worse than regular squats. When you do a below parallel to or below squat, it's actually much safer on the knee because of the friction between the muscle groups. Did you ever know that?
Yeah, I did know that, actually. And you want to hear something even crazier? I actually overheard this in the gym. This was years ago. I couldn't believe what I heard. You know, you always hear dumb things in the gym, but I heard one that just kind of took the cake. And it was a guy convincing another guy, and he actually was doing a good job of convincing him that if he were to go all the way down on shoulder press with dumbbells, it would be 10 times easier than if he just went to parallel and back up.
With shoulder presses?
Yeah. Instead of stopping halfway, he says if you go all the way down and go back up,
it's easier.
It's so much easier. Like he was talking
wait.
He was talking shit about people who do full range of motion on dumbbell shoulder presses.
Oh, he was saying I think you mean the opposite. He was saying that it's easier to do a half rep versus doing a full rep.
No. He was saying don't do full reps because they're easier than half reps.
Oh god.
He was saying like half reps are the harder way to do it. I couldn't believe it, and he was convincing the guy.
You know, it's so funny. When you go into a regular gym, everybody's a trainer. Everybody knows everything. Everybody's a master nutritionist. and no one knows nothing. That's why majority of the time people, when they go to the gym, they look the same year after year after year.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I mean, that's the sad truth. It's crazy because, you know, you would think, I mean, I would at least, if I was making no progress in whatever it is I'm doing in life, spending that much time doing it and that long of a period of time, not seeing the results, I would question what I'm doing and I would have to reevaluate it and do something different. But people still seem to do the same thing even when they don't make results.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense. But today's New York Muscle Radio quote of the day. I actually like doing this because I think it sets the tone for the podcast. So today's quote, and this quote was, again, another one by Big Pete Kacharian because he said it multiple times, but we'll quote the real person who said it this time. Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. And good old Mike Tyson. You had to say it in his voice, though.
Till they get punched in the face.
In the face.
In the face. But
I love him in The Hangover.
Yeah.
The first one.
That was
oh my
great.
God.
That was great.
I can feel it coming in the air. And he punches him and he just knocks him right out.
You know what's a funny story? Let's talk about the quote, but just talking about Mike Tyson. Did you know that when he did his first official boxing match in the Junior Olympics, he was a teenager. I don't know how old he was. You know, in the Olympics when they do boxing, they wear the headgear and everything. And he's a Junior Olympics teenager. He got like an 8-second knockout on the other guy with headgear on.
Yeah,
that just
crazy.
tells
He was
you
a sick boxer.
That just tells you how much of a vicious fighter he was.
But anyway, going back to his quote, and his quote is so right, and I think it actually falls in line with him, obviously, because everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and for boxing especially, that's so relatable because obviously, you go into this match, you say, all right, I'm going to do this, and this to this guy because he usually boxes this way, and then the guy punches you in the face without even expecting, and you're like, fuck, everything is gone, and that plan's not going to work.
Yep.
And life always does that to you. You may start a diet, you may start a training program, you may try to, whatever. In my case, you want to deadlift 600 pounds. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, until life happens, until life gets in the way. Maybe your goal is, today I'm going to work out at 12 o'clock, and then something comes up in the middle of the day and you can't work out at 12 o'clock. So you always got to be able to work around life. And that's just what it comes down to. You got to work around getting punched in the face. When you get punched in the face, you just got to regroup quickly and get right back into the game.
Yeah, you can't just go into everything expecting that it's going to happen the exact way you think it will, and then that goes in fitness, that goes for everything, especially dieting. I think a lot of people, they like a perfect example is they have a plan. Okay, I'm going to start my cut diet and I'm going to get in competition shape or I'm going to get in beach body shape, whatever it is. You start your diet, you're motivated, you're getting ready for Memorial Day weekend, whatever it is. And you start off strong and you say, okay, I'm going to cut my calories down to this amount and I'm going to be good from here. You cut the calories down 2 or 3 days later, you're suffering, you're getting hungry. You basically just got punched in the face right there. And now you're saying, shit, that was my plan, but I didn't expect this to happen. So what do I do now? And most people end up just quitting or binging or whatever it is.
Yep, going through episode number 123, the diet cycle. That's when that starts to happen.
Yep.
So, again, guys, it's good to have a plan, but you can't let your plan get derailed. If you get punched in the face, you have to just regroup and work around it. If you get injured, let's say if your plan is to do this and this and this in the gym and you get injured, you're just going to have to regroup, pick yourself back up, and then just fight right back at it. Find a different way to get it done, and you will. So just remember that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, but it's not the end. That doesn't mean that that's the end. It's over,
Yep, you got to have a plan, but you also have to have a flexible plan because it's not always going to happen the way you expect it to.
Exactly. But I actually didn't even tell you this, so I'll just tell you now. One of my friends, Ryan, he actually started an app on iTunes, which I think is cool, and I got to tip my hat to anyone who does that stuff because I have no patience to do like coding and all that other stuff. And if you don't know how to code, it's probably really expensive to just start an app. I would assume it would be like a hard journey. But he started an app called Strength Flight, and he let me try it. It's basically, you would like it actually. It's basically DUP training customized for you. So you punch in all your stats, where your one rep maxes are right now, and it sets out a whole, different program for your DUP, utilizing the DUP protocol.
Oh, nice.
I know for you really don't understand the concept of DUP in and out yet. I haven't really sat down and gone through it and explained it in depth with you. I know it a little more than you because I think I've utilized it a lot more than you. It's been almost 2 years now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But this app just kind of takes all the guessing out. You literally punch in what your maxes are now, and then boom, it spits out a whole routine for you. And what the cool part about it is every 4 weeks the different blocks change. So it's never like, all right, here's your 12-week program, good luck. It's every 4 weeks the program changes for you, and everything alters based on your performance in the gym. So it's kind of like an auto-regulated program spitter outer. It's cool. It's a cool app.
Tell them to send it over my way. I would like to give it a try. I could get a good feel for that DUP. Although DUP. I actually am training DUP right now too, but it has my own little twist on it.
Yeah, so again, if you guys are interested in having something like that set up for you, you can head on over to the app. In the iTunes store, I believe it's on Android devices also. It's called Strength Flight. Just a cool program. You know, we always kind of try to review things that are a little bit outside of the box, and it will help you guys in some way, in some form. So again, if you're confused on DUP type training, that thing will work great for you. So again, check that out. And I have to tip my hat to Ryan again. He came out with a really cool app and just a cool program in general. So kind of annoyed that we didn't think of that, big guy.
That's all right. We got our own way of doing things. But you know, it's funny talking about technology and new ways to do things. We were having a conversation actually at your last meet. I don't know if you remember this. We were talking to one of the old school powerlifters, talking about how he used to train when he was in his prime and how training's evolved so much since then. And, you know, he brought up the fact that people use all these apps now, you know, and I think he meant apps, but he meant more about all this other stuff that's available out there, meaning back then they didn't really have anything. It was just train, you know, and they had some great results. And, you know, the argument we had, and we spoke about this afterwards, was, you know, we have all these apps now, but that's why everybody's breaking fucking world records like left and right now, you know,
yeah.
with all these new things available. That's what's taking the sport to the next level. So, you know, it's funny because the old school style of everything always works because obviously it did produce results, but I think people need to be more open-minded about the new things that we have available to us because there's plenty of things now that are just, you know, giving us a huge advantage over to what people had 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know?
Well, of course, you know, something like Ryan's program, Strength Flight, he utilizes DUP, which, you know, talks about doing multiple lifts per week as far as like, you know, doing squats 3 times a week and doing deadlifts maybe twice or 3 times a week. Whereas, you know, before these guys in general, I mean, bodybuilders too would only do one body part a day for a week. You know, they wouldn't hit a body part for 7 days after that because the fear of overtraining and your muscles is basically falling off. And that myth basically is out the window now. You could train muscle groups up to 4 times a week, 5 times even, without even having to worry about like recovering from that, you know? So it's just, and people are getting so much stronger. I mean, me, myself, I've used DUP for 2 years now, and I've gained significant amount of strength on all my lifts, just training 2 to 3 times a week, no minimum than twice.
Yeah.
On any lift at any given time, you know? That's a lot of time under the bar.
Yeah, and, you know, I think for anybody who hasn't ventured over and tried that yet, if you give it a try and you stick with it, you'll actually be very surprised with the results, especially if you're one of those people who think, oh, there's no way that this could work for me. Give it a try. You know, those are probably the people that need it the most, believe it or not.
Exactly. All right, guys, again, our seminar is coming up soon, November 19th. If you haven't booked your ticket yet, you can head on over to NewYorkMuscleRadio.com, and you can order the pre-sale on the tickets, and you'll get the special bonuses, which is our Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code, ebook and audiobook, and a whole list of other benefits that you're going to get by coming with us. And plus, you get to hang out with us. Who doesn't want to hang out with us all day, man?
I think we'll grab some food afterwards, too. So if anybody's around for that. And Anthony said he was going to buy alcoholic beverages for everybody as well.
Yeah, well,
I'm just kidding. He didn't actually say that. I can
make that happen. I can actually make that happen.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know how much we'll get done if that's the case, but
well, if anybody's interested in that, let us know.
Yeah, we could definitely make that happen, but we'll, I don't know. Again, that would probably have to be after the seminar.
Oh, after, yes, of course.
Oh, boy, man. You better hope there's not a lot of ladies there, Pete, and you start getting a little alcohol in you, you start getting silly.
Anthony just likes it so he could be around all the action, you know. So he's got to put it off on me because he really wants to be there hanging out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
You're the
all
one
me,
that brought it up.
It's all
you the one who brought it up. All right, guys, let's move on to the listener question of the day. Again, if you guys have a question you want us to answer, you could submit it on our website, NewYorkMuscleRadio.com/listener question. So today's question. Hi, guys. First of all, thank you for your awesome podcast. I randomly came across you guys about a year ago and have listened to every single episode since. Shame on you, man. You haven't went back and listened to all the other episodes. You put out such great content, and the two of you complement each other really well. See that? We're made for each other, big guy. Recently, you have really stepped up your game, and the quality has reached another level. Well, thank you for that. My question is as following. I became a father for the first time 6 weeks ago. I love going to the gym, but I also want to spend as much time with my family as possible. Work also takes up a lot of time. Do you guys have any advice in terms of finding good balance between family, fitness, family life, and life in general? Thank you so much, Martin, a loyal follower from Norway.
That's a good question. And I think you might be a little bit better at answering that just because you have a wife and you have a daughter. Me balancing it would just be balancing it for my lifestyle. And for me, that's really just picking a certain time of the day where I know I can train, where there's not going to be any distractions. I have nothing else going on. A lot of times people try and get workouts in during a time period where things might come up. If you have a family, if you have a wife, if you have a daughter, and you guys generally eat dinner around a certain time, trying to squeeze in your workout around that time might throw you off a lot here and there. Anthony has certain times of the day where he has to pick his daughter up from school. Obviously, that's not going to be time for training. You could probably talk about balancing it a little bit more because your schedule is definitely more hectic than mine. I just make sure I train the same time every day, and that helps a lot because there was a period of time where my schedule was a little bit flexible, so I allowed my training schedule to be more flexible as well. But that actually didn't work out too well because other things would come up since my schedule was so flexible to begin with that my training would be at a different time every day, and it might throw off your consistency. So I think setting a certain time of the day where you train every time will get you in that rhythm, and you'll be able to plan around that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot of good things there. I mean, first and foremost, you have to understand, you have to look at your day as almost like a calendar, hour by hour basis, because that's going to be the most important thing with scheduling things. You got to say, okay, you're devoting this amount of time to sleeping, you're devoting this amount of time to work. Mm-hmm. And those remaining hours are when you have the time for yourself and for your family. So obviously, family comes first. You should always put your family before working out because obviously your family's going to be there forever. Hopefully working out is there also for you forever, but that's something that you could do on your time after. So again, I don't know your schedule. I mean, you didn't really give too much detail, but let's just say you work 9 to 5 and, you have the luxury. Your wife is able to take your child to school and then she goes to work. So basically you have a block in the morning where you can train before anything. And you also have that block of time at night where you can train. Again, if you guys both come home the same time from work, and you guys have dinner together, it's like a family ritual, and then you help put the kid to bed, whatever your home schedule is. Maybe night training is not the best thing for you. Maybe you need to go to sleep a little bit earlier and wake up earlier and go to the gym in the morning. This way you can kind of get the whole day done. I mean, I guess if I worked at 9 to 5, that's kind of what I would do. I think I would get up at 4 a.m. I'd be one of those guys, get up at 4 a.m., go to the gym, get it all done, and then just start about my day like that, and then I have the whole rest of the day with my family. Again, it's going to really depend on what you do for a living, and what hours you have to devote to working out. You also have to kind of work backwards too. Maybe utilizing Saturday and Sunday because those days you don't work. Maybe making those your 2 biggest workout days and then trying to fit another 2 or 3 days in during the week, whenever you can. Again, it's all going to depend on what your schedule is like. I hope I answered that question good. It's kind of tough when you don't know, what's going on. I like how he says here, work also takes up a lot of time. I think that's funny. Just quit your job, man. Don't worry about it. Just quit your job and go live at the gym. It's fine.
Yeah, you could be like that guy in Bigger, Stronger, Faster out of the van. You'll be good. If you can out squat everybody, out bench everybody, out deadlift everybody, then who's the king?
Exactly. Wait, wasn't he in Rocky? Not Rocky.
Over the Top.
Over the Top? Yeah.
From Over the Top to Behind the Dumpster.
That's sad, man. Really, really sad. But I hope I answered your question, Martin, and thank you again for all the kind words you said to us, and glad that you're really enjoying the podcast. Again, I would, like I said, look at your schedule hour by hour basis and just go from there. If you work 9 to 5, obviously those blocks are out, and then you have to just plug in, what happens before work and what happens after work. You could also go to the gym late at night too. That's also another option too. I mean, everyone's different. I would get up earlier and get it done earlier than having to wait. I would hate that, not dreading, but waiting the whole day to go to the gym, and then something's always going to come up at night when you're home with your family. Kid's going to get sick, the dog's going to get sick, or something else will happen, and you're going to just regret going to the gym, and you're going to get grumpy that you didn't go. That's why I'd rather just wake up early and get it over with and be done with it,
Well, I'll tell you one thing too. The biggest thing is you leave yourself open for so many excuses when you do train late at night because You always have that excuse if you're supposed to go to the gym at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., whatever it is, and something comes up and, oh, shit, I can't make it. Well, you know what? I'll just go tomorrow because the day's almost over anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why it also helps, too, if you have space in your house to pick up some home equipment and, make yourself a home gym. I really think that we should probably do a whole podcast on that because I think that a home gym, if you have the space for it, can really, really take you to the next level because just for the time saver of it. I mean, since doing that, my training has improved so much. I mean, my training was going to improve regardless, but it's less distraction. I get so much more done. And, it's just, I think a lot of people struggle with having a home gym because they get distracted from their home life, which is okay. If something happens and you have to run inside, you go inside and you handle it and you just go back out and finish what you have to do. But you have to be just dedicated to your craft and understand, okay, when I'm in the gym, when I'm in my gym, when I'm in my basement, when I'm in my garage, whatever it is, I'm working out. That's it. I'm at a gym. I can't be bothered. You just like I said, you got to pick times of the day to do things and then just make it, okay, this is when I'm working out and that's it. I'm not going to take my phone in. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to kind of get it done. That's the best way to approach it. I mean, that's what I've done and that's what's worked for me. Granted, I do have a more flexible schedule than most, but still, I still fit it in no matter what.
Yeah, that's the key. And you got to have a plan. But like we said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So remember, you got to be flexible.
Well, like today. So for argument's sake, during the middle of the day is usually when I get the most done. I get podcasting done. I get any other work that I have to do, whether, it's with my product, buyproteincoffee.com, caffeine. If I have to do something with that, I usually get everything done in the middle of the day. Well, I got punched in the face today. My daughter was feeling sick, so I had to pick her up early today. So I had no choice but to rearrange my life around that. But I have to get it done because I'm a dad and family comes first. So you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
And that's it.
That's that. Let's take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back with today's topic, the 6 exercises you should never do.
But I'll tell you what, when I'm done, my biceps are humongous. Humongous. Like that, bang!
My name is Anthony Bevilacqua, and I'm the host of New York Muscle Radio podcast. My arms have been a weak point for years. When I started training, my arms measured 11 inches. Even after many years of hardcore training, nothing would get them to grow. With the help of my co-host, Big E, we set out on a mission to gain 1 solid inch to my arms in 12 weeks.
In the greatest experiment of all.
12 weeks later, this program finally helped me get 18-inch arms. The 12-week arm experiment, the ultimate arm growth program, ebook, the audio book, and the workout video. Pick up your copy now on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down that tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get to the show.
Hey guys, it's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, and I just wanted to announce that my brand new personal training facility is now open. I'm currently taking on new clients in the Long Island, New York area. If you're interested in working with the best personal trainer in the business, head on over to abfitnesstrainer.com and sign up for your free consultation. Then you can understand why bodybuilding.com has named me Personal Trainer of the Month. All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode number 125, 125. The 6 exercises that should never, ever, ever, ever be done. I'm super excited for this one. Do you want to just roll? You want to just roll, man? You want to just go right into it?
Let's
go right
roll.
into exercise number 1?
Let's go right into it.
Exercise number 1, barbell curls. I'm totally joking.
I was just about to say, what?
I know someone was listening to that right now. If they were driving, listening to, they almost crashed off the side of the road.
Yeah, I'm sitting here. My head almost exploded.
Yeah, Pete's like, no. Actually, funny enough, guys, when we were talking about the show notes for this episode, my co-host here said we should say standing calf raises. I was hysterical.
That is a true statement.
Did you actually see what I put on the New York Muscle Radio page for you?
Yeah, about your mean fucking dogs, right?
Yeah. It was actually funny. I'm not going to tell anyone on the podcast. You have to go on our Facebook page, facebook.com/New York Muscle Radio. Like the page, and you'll see the post that I put up for my big guy there. But that's a little joke, inside joke for those of you that follow us.
If anybody wants to know, though, why I did say standing calf raises, I know it sounds funny, but it's not because I think that they're useless exercise. The fact is, as far as many calf raise variations, that one does place a significant amount of spinal compression on you compared to other ones, such as using a leg press and other options. It's not a bad exercise. A calf.
Plus, he hates it.
Plus, I just hate it. Yeah, it's just not a fun exercise. So,
well, yeah, I mean, this is not an exercise, so this is not, this is not part of it. But I think that you could also get a lot more leg development from using like a leg press because you're going to use weight. So I don't think you could overload the muscle enough using a standing calf raise versus doing another exercise. But again, this is not the exercise. I guess we should do a podcast. You remember that book, Eat This, Not That? Maybe we should do one like on exercise, like use this, not that.
That's a good idea.
That would be cool, actually. All right, good. We got to write that one down. Use this, not that. And that would actually fit in fittingly in there. Instead of using a calf raise, use a leg press instead. All right, let's get right into this. So exercise number 1, behind the neck press.
Yeah, I think that this is fitting for number 1, because it's probably one of the most injury-prone exercises in the gym that you could be doing. That the risk-to-reward ratio is just very bad. You got a high amount of risk with very little reward. It's actually a great exercise to develop your deltoids overall, because if you switch the emphasis from a front press to a behind-the-neck press, you are engaging some more of the medial and the rear delts as opposed to just strictly the front delts. But the fact is, it is probably the most dangerous position to put yourself in your rotator cuff, and your rotator cuff is very, very fragile. I've had rotator cuff injuries before. I don't know about you. I actually haven't even had them doing behind the neck presses, but when I have injured my rotator cuff, I had tendonitis in both my rotator cuffs. Behind the neck presses were impossible. The shoulder mobility just goes out the window, and even if you have healthy shoulders, it's definitely a very high risk movement. Not worth doing.
Behind the neck presses were really, really popular way back in the day, like the 50s. Guys like Steve Reeves and Reg Park would do them. With massive amount of weight too, 300 pounds overhead behind the neck, which is insane. I think that I don't want to say that they're so bad. I mean, you can definitely, if you have the good mobility to do them, you can work your way up to using massive amount of weight. But for development purposes, you're better off just grabbing 2 dumbbells and using 2 dumbbells because it'll mimic the same movement. And that barbell is just going to put that shoulder in a really, really tough spot. Again, if you don't have the mobility to do it, it's definitely one of those exercises that can be really, really dangerous, and I would not recommend it. You get so much more doing it to the front or using a pair of dumbbells.
Yeah.
One of my favorite exercises actually is using, in place of behind the neck press would be a standing dumbbell press, which are totally brutal actually if you do them correctly.
Yeah, that's a very tough exercise. It doesn't look like it, but it's very tough, and
yeah, you'll instantly use like half the weight you normally use, and not even because it's the shoulders can't handle it. It's just using so much more of your whole body when doing it.
Yeah, it's a true total body exercise there. But as far as the people saying, well, I like doing behind the neck presses and I have good shoulder mobilities and it doesn't cause me pain, I'm going to do it. But you have to look at it in terms of longevity. We talk about this semi-frequently on this podcast, and if you're planning on doing behind the neck presses now and you're still planning on doing them 10 years down the line, I'm willing to bet if you do them regularly, you're going to suffer little nagging injuries here and there over time, because you're always going to have wear and tear on the body. So you want to prevent all these things if possible. So why do an exercise that has a higher risk of injury, especially if you're going to do it long term, when you could just avoid it completely and still get the results you want?
Exactly. Plus, I think if you do them in front, you just do a standing barbell press to the front, you're going to get so much more out of it as far as development for the whole body than you would doing a behind the neck press anyway. And behind the neck, most guys, when they do them, they don't even go behind the neck. They kind of do like a half rep motion.
It's like the top
sort
of the
behind the head. Yeah, and that's actually worse for the rotator cuff than going all the way down and getting full range of motion there. So I wouldn't even recommend that. That's why we're saying this is the number 1 exercise you should not be doing. All right, exercise number 2, Romanian deadlifts. Should I tell you my rationale why I chose this one, big guy, or do you want to take it?
No, you could take this one. This was actually your suggestion. I agree on it, but why don't you start with what you have to say about it?
So the deadlift, there's many, many different variations to it. A Romanian deadlift is similar to a stiff leg deadlift, in where the bar is in front of you, you're kind of bending forward at the waist, at the hips, you're pushing your hips back, and you're stretching out your hamstrings. But the difference between a stiff leg deadlift and a Romanian deadlift is that in a Romanian deadlift, the bar is only going halfway down the shins, whereas versus a stiff leg deadlift, it's in the same exact position actually, but you're going all the way down. You're going back down to basically like a full deadlift. So I would say not to do a Romanian deadlift, and that it serves no purpose to stop midway through the shin and focus on doing a stiff leg deadlift. And you're going to get way more out of the movement by going all the way down versus stopping at the shin.
Yeah, this is one of those exercises where you have variations that are much more beneficial, especially for what you're trying to accomplish. So like you mentioned, if you're using a deadlift variation maybe to improve your deadlift or maybe to work your posterior chain directly, you have different options that are much more efficient at whatever it is you're doing. So it really makes no sense to choose a less efficient variation to an exercise. So that's definitely
the only
a
thing I
reason.
would think Romanian deadlifts would help with would be the lockout portion of the lift but you're not doing a Romanian deadlift to help the lockout of a deadlift. You're doing a Romanian deadlift to work that posterior chain. Why, like you said, why do a half rep motion when you could do a full range of motion and do the stiff leg and go all the way down and actually mimic the deadlift?
Right. You always want to be more specific to whatever it is you're trying to gain performance in or do better at. So if your goal is to be a better deadlifter, you want to mimic that as close as possible, even when you're doing variations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there. Again, you could do these, the other variations of Romanian deadlifts. You could do them on a deficit. You could do them kind of higher. You could do them with dumbbells. I would just automatically take out Romanian deadlifts and just call them stiff leg and just focus on going all the way down. And you're going to get so much more out of it doing that versus stopping halfway. I just think that that's a kind of an ego lift at that point.
Yeah, and most people don't really have trouble in that area. If you're doing a stiff leg, you need to focus on bringing up your hamstrings a little more. If you're doing a deficit, it might be because of off the bottom, you're a little bit weak. So those are two exercises that I use regularly in my training. And for me, they really serve the purpose of doing accessory movements for a more specific movement like the deadlift.
All right, so we'll move on to exercise number 3. So exercise number 3 is, and this is one of my favorite ones. I don't even know the technical name for it, actually, but I see it all the time done in the gym, and it just makes me laugh when I see it. I believe it's called crucifix curls, and it's basically when you use a cable crossover machine, you have the cable set up all the way on top, and you basically grab each cable and basically do a front double bicep pose where you would bring your forearms to your head, and you're squeezing the bicep. I absolutely hate that movement. I've never felt that movement in my biceps. I've seen probably every single guy in the gym do this movement, and some guys swear by it, love it. I've never felt one thing doing it.
I have to agree 100%, and I'm one of those people, and you know this, that genetically my biceps work pretty well with any movement that I throw at it. I pretty much get a pump doing anything for biceps. Even not doing biceps, I get a pump. And this exercise is pretty much the most useless one I've ever done in terms of isolation exercises for the bicep. And there's a lot of things about it that on the surface just tell you right away that it's not an efficient exercise for the biceps. I mean, the biggest thing is the range of motion on there. It looks like when you're doing it that you have a great range of motion because you're using a cable. And generally with cables, there's constant tension throughout the whole movement. But when you're in that position, you're basically only getting a concentration on the biceps throughout the mid-range of the movement. Something like a preacher curl, you might get more concentration out of the bottom. Something like a cable curl, you might get it more out of the top. But then when you're doing this crucifix motion, when you're fully extended, those cables are not pulling on your biceps. They're basically pulling on your delts. They're pulling on your arms outward. There's no tension on it. So you have to move it into the mid position before you get the tension on the biceps. Then when you're in your locked out position, generally that cable is pulling back on the elbow and the forearm. So you're only in that mid-range position. The only time that that's not true is if you set the cable much higher than shoulder length, but now you're doing some type of odd reverse pull down motion. So that movement where your arms are directly out in the sides, doing that front double bicep pose is easily just probably the biggest ego movement in the gym. And it's not an exercise that, even if it did work the biceps directly, would be conducive to hypertrophy, because the amount of weight you're going to use on it is ridiculously low compared to even something you would do like a dumbbell curl. I could easily train with 60, 70 pound dumbbells doing curls, but if I were to do this exercise on the machine, I'd probably put 10 pounds on the cable machine. Yeah,
for me, one of my weakest poses in bodybuilding is my front double bicep, and I just feel like it's because of the way I'm built, but I wanted to improve my biceps in that shot, so I thought maybe utilizing the crucifix curls would definitely help that, and only to find out doing it weeks later that I've gotten nothing from them. I've tried them so many different ways. I've tried them one arm at a time. I've tried them on a lower cable. I've tried them kneeling. I've tried them every single way because so many people have swore to me that they actually work, and I never felt a thing. And my biceps didn't grow until I started doing the arm training program, the arm experiment that we put together on New York Muscle Radio. And, basically it's going to be heavy barbell curls, heavy dumbbell curls. I mean, that's basically the meat and potatoes of it. I don't want to give too much away there, but the crucifix curls do not fit in that program at all.
No, there's not one set of those in there or anything even remotely like that.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's one of the exercises you can ditch. Ditch the crucifix curls. Dicks.
Dicks? Oh, man. Where are we going with this podcast?
Ditch the ego curls. All right. Exercise number 4. This is a cool one, and I think we're going to blow away a lot of people's minds with this one. Sit-ups. And when I say sit-ups, I'm not just talking about the actual sit-up motion. I'm talking about crunches here also. I think that you should not waste your time doing these ab exercises, as a sit-up will work mostly the hip flexors, and even a crunch too. A crunch is a good exercise to hit the abs, but if you're trying to get a six-pack, doing crunches and sit-ups is going to get you nowhere. Pete, when was the last time you did a crunch?
Seriously, high school.
Okay, so
at least over 10 years. I'm not even kidding. I've not done one body weight ab movement in well over 10 years easily. And even when I was in high school, I probably did them messing around.
I actually do some type of an ab movement. I do them after my squat and deadlift training. I actually like to do hanging leg raises, but not for ab development. I actually do it to kind of reset my pelvis after I do squat and deadlift. It kind of, when I hang from a pull-up bar, it pulls my pelvis down, and I always get like a couple good cracks out of it, so I know it kind of resets my pelvis. Because obviously when you squat and deadlift, you get a lot of compression in that area. So when I hang from a pull-up bar after and I use hanging leg raises, it actually kind of resets my pelvis for me. And that's just something I guess I've used in injury prevention. You call it bro science, whatever. But for me, it always works. That's the only reason why I do them. I don't do them for abs. Pete, why don't we do crunches and stuff for abs?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is the compound movements that we do on a regular basis. The squats, the deadlifts, the overhead presses, weighted pull-ups are another big one. Those all work the core way harder than something like a body weight crunch or leg raise or whatever it is. I mean, you have to think about it like this. If you're squatting 500 pounds, if you have a 400-pound bar on your back and you're going up and down with that, if you're pulling 500 pounds off the floor, you're compressing and you're working all these muscles in your body, and you're exposing it to way heavier loads than something like a body weight crunch. How do you think your abs are going to be engaged with half your body weight on the floor just doing a sit-up versus pulling a 500-pound bar off the floor? You know, it's going to have a significant impact on it. And like I said, I haven't done a body weight crunch or any body weight ab work since high school. And I've been religiously doing compound movements since then. And every time I diet down, even when I don't diet down, my abs are somewhat visible. But when they're really sharp and dieted down, you could see them more. My abs, they're shaped like bricks. You know, I have very thick abs that you could tell are very strong. And those were built solely on compound movements. And everyone always asks me, what do you do for abs? What do you do for abs? And I don't do anything for abs. And I always tell them, and they look at me like I have 4 heads, you know. What do you mean you don't do anything abs? Well, I haven't done an ab exercise in well over 10 years. And that's the truth. I mean, you have 2 things that are going to build abs. Progressive overload, like anything else that builds muscle in general, and dieting is going to show off those abs. So how much progressive overload are you going to do with a sit-up on the floor versus a 500-pound squat or deadlift?
Exactly. And I've even noticed for myself a lot more in the ab department development-wise as I've gotten stronger and stronger. I mean, I've done over 520 pounds in competition beltless. And one of the things I noticed was how well-defined my abs are getting not doing anything, you know, not doing any type of head movement at all, like I said. So I think it just goes to show you that a lot of people overdo this. And when people talk about like an ab routine or this or that, it's just to sell a magazine. It's just to get people to actually do it, you know. And I know a lot of guys who are models who swear by doing abs. You have to do them like every other muscle group, but those guys also aren't squatting 500 pounds, deadlifting over 4. You know, it's not happening for those guys. So I guess they have to kind of do that kind of development. But then at the same time, it's all relative. You know, I'm talking about a guy deadlifting 500. You know, if you're a girl or a female, you don't have to squat 500. But if you put even 135 pounds on your back, you're damn sure you're going to get a lot of ab development doing that versus doing a sit-up or a crunch or whatever.
Yeah, if you're doing those heavy compound movements, whatever weight you're using, that's still going to be more, and it's going to challenge your abs more than you doing just your body weight. So it's all relative. But if you're challenging yourself with heavy weights, don't even worry about doing these body weight ab exercises. Those are only making a comeback lately because of Instagram and everyone wants to do shirtless hanging leg raises and all that dumb shit, but they don't actually build their abs doing that, you know?
I should go live on Facebook and do that.
Yeah, so we're going to do we're going to do shirtless hanging leg raises, and we're going to sell you the ab program, guys.
Man, you know, how sore would we be if we actually did that? Well, I wouldn't be sore because I usually do them regularly. But like I said, if we just like actually did, because I remember way back in the day, I used to do like an ab routine. I would do like 20 sets for abs.
I got to be honest with you. Like I said, even when I did abs in high school, there was a period of time when I first started training in high school, I had no aspirations of being a bodybuilder or getting into it. Originally, like I'd say in the first year or two of high school when I first started training, and I just wanted to lose weight. I wanted to look good. I wanted to be in shape. And I did abs, but to be honest, I slacked on them every time because I'm just like, this shit sucks. I hate doing abs. You know, I didn't mind doing squats. I didn't mind doing deadlifts. I didn't mind doing cardio. I didn't mind dieting, but I just never saw the point of it. And the fact was, I guess intuitively, I knew it was almost a waste of time, you know? And I'm the type of person where if I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of my time, I won't do it. So it's one of those things, like I said, I don't do it all now because I know it's just not time efficient. There's really no need to do it. It's not going to hurt you if you want to do a little bit of hanging leg raises, but if you're covering yourself with those heavy squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, and weighted pull-ups, stuff like that, you're fine. You don't need to do it. Don't waste the time. Funny
enough, I'm looking back at it now, when I did all those sets for abs, I actually got nothing in terms of development. And I'm not even kidding. You know, I always say, you know, people have said it before, powerlifting training ruins physique, you know, as a joke. But now that I've done it for quite a long time now, there's so many more positive changes that I've seen to my body. Like, it's almost like to the point where I really understand why some bodybuilders, you know, powerlifters say you don't have to do anything else other than the 3 big movements, because it's so true, man. I haven't done like a fly, like a chest fly in so long. Yeah. I haven't done like all those stupid bodybuilder movements that I used to do. And I'm getting so much more development overall throughout my whole body. It's insane. And again, my abs, something I don't do. You know, I do hanging leg raises, but I don't do them for the ab development reasons. But the development that I'm seeing is just insane. It's crazy. It's really nuts how just a couple of big movements is all you really need.
Yeah, I mean, as the years go on, and especially in the last year or two, I've noticed that my training has progressed in such a way where I cut out all the unnecessary shit, and it's just each year I keep pulling new things out of it where I say, you know what, this isn't necessary either, and I've really gotten down to, or back to the basics with everything, and I'm still making progress. So you gotta pay attention to what you're doing and see if there's anything in there that's just not needed, you know. And if it's not needed, don't do it.
Yeah, and you have to also do the exercise you like doing too, you know? Don't do them because someone else says you have to do them. Like, if you hate doing abs, like Pete said, don't do them. You don't have to do them. If you want abs, diet down and just squat and deadlift heavy, and you'll get abs. It's just that simple.
It really is that simple. Let's
move on. So, exercise number 5, underhanded barbell rows. Again, another exercise you should never do. They actually put your arms at a huge risk and your biceps at a huge risk, I should say. And actually, funny enough, I was utilizing these. Again, I've tried everything, you know. So it's funny, we say this all the time, and I've said this, you know, that my body's my own experiment. Utilizing barbell rows, underhanded barbell rows for a long time. I actually liked them in the beginning, and dude, it gave me tendonitis that still bothers me to this day.
Yeah, that's a good reason not to do them.
Yeah, it really, really killed my elbow, and I want to kill myself for even attempting to focus on doing them for such a long time, because my elbow still bothers me today from underhanded rows.
Yeah, I remember the first few times I tried doing those, I knew right away that those were not a good exercise. And a lot of people were raving about them, that it was, you know, the traditional thought was, and well, it is true to some extent, not to the degree people make it out to be, but that they're better to emphasize or focus on the lower lats, because you do get a little bit more lat engagement with the arms in the underhand position. But the fact of the matter is, the risk that it puts your bicep at is way, way higher than the reward you're going to get from activating your lats. There's so many other exercises you could do to mimic that same movement while not putting your biceps at that risk. And you know, I noticed right away after first 2 or 3 times using them, there was a couple times where it was just in that position, the stress that it was pulling on my bicep tendon, it almost felt like it wanted to tear. And that's an exercise that many people have torn biceps on. Many people have got elbow injuries on that. It's just one of those exercises, again, that it gets maybe glorified a little bit in magazines. Some people talk about it, but the fact is, if you look at it mechanically, it's not an efficient movement, and it's just a high risk movement, not worth the reward.
The funny thing is, you mentioned that lower lat development. That's something that a model once told me this. A bodybuilder model guy once told me that you can never have too much lower lat, and I can't agree with that more because that just enhances your look from the front. And we're talking about lower lats. We're talking about how the muscles under your armpits, how they insert all the way down. My co-host has a huge sweep under his arms of his lats, and they tie in deep low in his midsection there. So he actually looks a lot more V than most people do. And I've always wanted to get more thicker in the lower lat area, but I can never find an exercise that would do it. Hence why I was trying underhanded barbell rows. And as you guys know from listening to this podcast for years, if I find an exercise that I feel in a certain area, I'll stick with it and ride it out until I figure out it doesn't work anymore. And in this time when I did it, it actually gave me tendonitis. So go figure. But what do you recommend for that area, big guy? So that we're talking about it. Yeah. I'm just curious. I mean, you don't do much either. I mean, I would say you're probably going to say pull-ups.
Well, you know what? The bread and butter of my back exercises, like I'm a big fan of doing deadlifts now, and I wasn't for years. But honestly, throughout the last 5 years, the two exercises that I've done, and even without deadlifting, have been able to bring out the lower lats is heavy weighted pull-ups, and I do barbell rows, but I do them overhand. But I also don't do them the traditional sense most people do. In fact, I've had people comment on my barbell rows asking if I'm doing barbell rows or shrugs or what the hell I'm doing. But the fact is, the best way to describe them, if anyone's familiar with a Yates row, which is a underhand grip barbell row, he does them very upright to the point where he's only bent over enough where his hands will reach about knee level, but he's underhand. I like that same position and do them overhand, and it's a very, very short concentrated range of motion. When I do this focuses solely on the lats. When you do bend over and do that traditional barbell row where your arms past the knees, or if you do them like a pendulum row where you do go all the way down to the floor, there is a much greater range of motion, but because it's not as concentrated, there's going to be much more scapular retraction. It's going to hit more of the rhomboids, the rear delts, the upper traps. When you do a shorter range of motion on certain exercises, you can actually isolate certain areas of that muscle group. I know that sounds a little bro science-y, but the fact is, if you try it and you do a much shorter range of motion on your barbell rows, making sure you pull it to your lower abdomen, I can guarantee you'll feel those lats working. And it's counterintuitive because generally in that upright position, you would think that it would work more traps and rear delts. Like I said, I've had people actually ask me if I'm doing shrugs because it's not that far off from a shrug position, but if you're pulling that bar to your lower abdomen and you are leaning forward, it is going to engage those lower lats. If you don't believe me, give it a try. It definitely works. Along, like I said, with the heavy weighted pull-ups, you really can't mimic that exercise on any other piece of equipment.
See, one of the things with me with the heavy weighted pull-ups, I've done heavy pull-ups, 3 plates hanging from the belt, and I never really saw much in lat development. It wasn't until I really switched over to doing a lat pull down that I really saw more in lat development versus doing a pull-up. I mean, I could do pull-ups all day. I feel like it doesn't give me as much development as a lat pull-down. I think because when you do a lat pull-down, it's more isolating to the lats versus a pull-up. Pull-up using more muscles when you do it. So for me personally, I'd rather grab a lat pull-down, and I agree with him on the barbell rows. So that's where I would head in that direction more so. But you do lat pull-downs, obviously.
Yeah, and actually, I have to agree with you. I do lat pull-downs kind of as like a third exercise, something maybe as a finisher here and there. I never use it as a primary exercise or a normal accessory work, but I do agree that as far as isolation and feeling it, lat pull downs always trump the weighted pull-ups. But I forgot to mention this, there is something that I do, and I forgot to mention it because I do it, I've always done it this way. It's just like second nature to me. It almost feels like the normal way to do it. I have a big tendency, because genetically my biceps are very strong and they're overpowering muscles, to engage them a lot on pulling movements, no matter what it is. So I had to learn little techniques to take my biceps out of pulling movements. And with pull-ups, one of the biggest things that I noticed was, everyone says, oh, you got to do full range of motion pull-ups. You got to go to a dead hang, let the momentum stop, and then pull back up. That's definitely a good way to do it if your focus is purely strength. But I found that when I did it that way, when I was doing the textbook form pull-up, my biceps would be fried and my back wouldn't even feel like it's working. So I kind of started slowly switching my range of motion again to a more concentrated range of motion, not changing the body position like I did on a barbell row, but not going down to that full hang stretch position. Because what actually happens is when you hang like that, you're actually relaxing those lat muscles because you're just hanging them now. The contraction's off of them. So what's the first thing that happens? When you go to pull, you pull with the biceps first, especially if you're bicep dominant. So actually shortening that range of motion, focusing on the contraction, you'll engage the lats more so than the biceps. You can't take the biceps out of the movement, but keeping that contraction will actually focus on the lats more. When you go in that stretch position, you're letting those lats relax, and then you're pulling. If you have a stronger muscle group like the biceps wanting to start the movement, they're going to take over the entire movement. So that's a little trick that I use. Might not work for everybody, but that's a way I've taken an exercise that I do feel can be overpowered by other muscle groups and focusing on the target muscle.
All right, let's move on to the last exercise. That is upright rows. And this one we both agreed on right away. I can't agree with it more. You know, upright rows are just a dumb exercise. I never understood the purpose of them. I've done them so many times. They actually put your shoulder joint in a terrible position. You risk impingement doing them. But I never got anything out of them development-wise. When I would do them, I'd feel them in my biceps.
Yeah, I could agree with that also. And I think most people who do them don't even realize why they're doing them. There's people that claim that they do them as a trap exercise. There's people that claim they do it as a side delt exercise. I've even had people say they claim that it's a front delt exercise, which is probably the least realistic answer to that one. But overall,
the only reason I ever did them was because Arnold did them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the only reason I ever gave them a try. But the first few times I did them, I started getting tendonitis in my rotator cuffs, and I knew they were bad exercise. But not only the tendonitis in the rotator cuff, the wrist too, depending on how you do them. If you do them in a straight bar or a V bar, different movements. Cable is probably the safest out of all of them, but still pretty much a useless exercise in my opinion, because if you're training it for traps, you're going to handle a ton of more weight on a barbell shrug or a dumbbell shrug. Yeah. You're going to have a lot more carryover to your other exercises. If you're training them for a front delt, I don't even have to compare it to a front press or even a front raise, which is, again, another exercise that's not really too beneficial. And if you're doing it from side delts, lateral raises, there's really nothing that beats lateral raises for side delts. So it's almost like an exercise that just doesn't have any purpose.
Yeah, I mean, again, whenever I did them, I just felt them in my biceps, and that was it. So I just did them because Arnold did them, and one of the guys I was training with at the time did them. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do them. But looking back now, it's a lot of wasted energy went into a lot of wasted exercise, actually. So I'm glad we kind of did this podcast today because, now that I look at this list, I've done all these exercises, and I've put a lot of effort into all these exercises, and I've gotten zero out of them.
Yep.
It's so funny. You always hear, especially in the beginning, you always hear stick to these 4 movements: squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead. And it's so true, man. You can go a long way just sticking with those movements and adding in a bicep curl and a pull up there. You can get away with a lot, and a lot of development can happen from just focusing on those those groups. I kind of wish that when we started lifting like around now, because I feel like we'd be so much farther ahead than where we are now. Yeah. Like, I wasted so much time, man. So much. Like, I'm looking at this list and I'm like, fuck, I did this. It's like I'm looking at upright rows and I'm cringing already because I remember doing them, being in the gym, doing them, trying them with the easy curl bar, with the straight bar, hands wide, hands closed, and feeling nothing but biceps. Nothing but biceps.
How does it feel knowing that you did everything you thought you were supposed to do and everything you were told you were supposed to do just to find out that it was all wrong?
Yeah, it's sad. But this is why we put out this podcast, because we want to debunk all those myths for you and not let your average gym bro control your fitness. All right, guys, this was the episode for today. Again, if you guys have any questions or anything, you head on over to your email and email us, newyorkmuscleradio@gmail.com. Don't forget to sign up for our seminar. If you're interested in becoming a sponsored athlete, send us an email also for that. That's our 2017 search. But until the next good one, Big Guy, it's your turn.
Pete and Anthony, New York Muscle Radio, and we're out.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.